If you suck 15 my Praetorians, I will give you Rome total war.
Nah.
Idiot. This.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mediocre and what you've just witnessed is an average interaction with Caesar, a savage warlord who leads his empire by live-action role-playing as the Roman Emperor Caesar. And today I will explain the story of Fallout New Vegas if you side with him. I won't do that by myself, as we'll be joined by my very own character named Gene Z, or as the British call him, Gene Z. Let's get into this. Gene was 21 years old, juggling Subway servers on his phone in one hand and making Roman Empire memes on his iPad with the other. While he was distracted, he fell into the freezer compartment of a fridge. The twist? This happened in 2077, and it would take a little over 200 years for the fridge to run out of power. When he was thawed out, the world had ended. Everyone he'd ever known, long dead. Subway servers, offline. Now before you tell me that this backstory is whack and makes no sense, I'd urge you to look at Fallout 4's premise. Not knowing what to do in this strange new world, he made his way to Las Vegas to see if gambling and hookers were still a thing. With this in mind, it should go without saying that Gene is a lucky person. His brain power melted away from being frozen for centuries though, and Subway servers didn't help either. Despite this, he's well liked, so instead of thinking he was learning impaired, people thought he was just a chill guy who liked to party. Gene did know a lot about gadgets, explosives and energy weapons from always being on that damn phone, and he loved music, never missing a chance to tune in whenever he had a radio signal. You can imagine his surprise when one day he heard this transmission on the airwaves.
Today you die, Raul!
Claro, just I feel so bad. I died before I fixed her special robot.
This Raul individual sounded Hispanic, almost as if he was voiced by Danny Trejo or some shit. This meant that Gene could ask him the one question no one else could answer. Raul was being kept in Black Mountain, guarded by an army of super mutants. They proved no match for Gene though, who wrested the special rocket launcher Annabelle from one of his vanquished foes. Raul's cell door was locked via a terminal, and he didn't have the key. Gene's first idea was just to try his own password. He got it in one try. Raul turned out to be a ghoul, a person exposed to so much radiation, their skin starts to peel off until they look like this. Ghoulification also slows the aging process, and Raul was not just any ghoul, he was alive before the Great War, making him the perfect candidate for Gene's burning question. Raul, be honest with me, does this new world have any thick Latinas? Raul contemplated the words for a bit, then broke the news. Though Latinas still existed, the famine and wasteland life had put a dent in their overall thickness. It was more than Gene could take. War never changes. To cope with this devastating loss, Gene headed to Vegas to drown his sorrows in booze and slot machines, with his new best friend Raul tagging along. The ghoul was a man of culture, and he knew the Strip was where the real party was. The problem? You needed a solid credit score to get in, and Gene was still destitute from purchasing V-Bucks.
Why you got 49,000 V-Bucks? I'ma f*** you up!
Never deterred, Gene came up with his next move. Raul, don't worry. I know how to count cards. We'll be rich in no time. The dealer has 2 cards. I have 2 cards. The next card will also be a card. If I take one more card, I'll have more cards. Jackpot. And that's how Gene gained access to the Strip. The 2 high rollers then made their way to the Tops Casino, the coolest place in town, where they met an individual who sounded very similar to Matthew Perry, another pre-war hero.
What in the goddamn?
For some reason, Gene had no memory of this man, but he had an insanely decked out suit, so Gene was inclined to do whatever he told him. Benny then invited Gene up to his bachelor's pad, with promises of pizza, beer and FIFA 16, on condition that Gene went up there first. This is where Gene found a nice Lady Bonnet. He did not have the capacity to question why Benny would have this in his closet, nor did he care. Benny did take a rain check on their playdate, much to Gene's disappointment. When he got outside, Gene met another sharply dressed individual who used presumably Spanish words in his speech.
I am the greatest of Caesar's Frumentari.
He then invited him to Fortification Hill. Maybe there he could find the Latinas he so desperately sought. Here we meet Caesar, warlord conqueror of 87 tribes and self-styled Roman emperor of the wasteland. His grand plan is to conquer the West, with New Vegas as his crown jewel. To do that, he needs to wrest control of Hoover Dam from the NCR. Kaiser holds the opinion that the identity, culture and political system of any vanquished tribe should be erased, making place for totalitarian rule. With him, at the very top, using many aspects of the classic Roman Empire to lead his tribe to Caesar, and this is the way to lead in a post-apocalyptic world. Democratic factions will be bogged down by bureaucracy, corruption, and self-interested leaders. But a faction steeped in violence and dedication to one leader and its ideals is strong enough to survive the new world. Caesar does not tolerate weakness, disloyalty, or disobedience.
If you ever disobey me again, order my Praetorians to hack you to death with their machetes for my entertainment.
Even going as far as to kill the player character if they have the gall to interrupt his nap time.
I warned you not to bother me! Praetorians, kill this ass!
Despite being one of the first civilizations to utilize total warfare, he claims the Roman Empire fell because of decadence, dependence on luxury, and invention, just as the old world had destroyed itself with scientific progress. Hence why Caesar chooses to stay primitive where possible. His troops must rely on martial skill, rather than dependence on technology. Caesar is quite educated, yet he controls who gets access to education and healthcare, never allowing anyone else to surpass him in intellectual capacity, as this runs the risk of creating alternative authorities, something he absolutely cannot tolerate for his system to function. And don't even get him started on women. Seemingly well read, Caesar behaves as a modern day Redditor.
It's a philosophical theory, the kind you might encounter if you took time to read some books.
Fuck you, I read books. But don't be fooled, his intelligence maxes out at a 4, making him canonically dumber than Snuffles the mole rat. Jean did not understand much of what he said, but he was impressed by the pretty words Caesar sprinkled around, and he could get on board with bringing back the Roman Empire, so they're in business. The first task Caesar had for Jean was to destroy whatever Mr. House had stashed underneath the bunker in Fortification Hill. This bunker could be unlocked with the platinum chip the Legion had acquired from Benny, who had also found his way there for reasons unknown to Jean. Jean did not know much about a platinum chip, or Mr. House for that matter, so he asked Raul for the deeds, learning of rumors that Mr. House was in fact a bit ahead of the curve, and was already making e-girls before the Great War. Jean respected this, but he did not want to make his new friend Caesar angry, especially since this was his only chance to bring back the Roman Empire. So Jean aided Caesar instead of Mr. House. Mr. House was only a computer, Jean reasoned. His threats were empty.
Do you have the slightest idea of what you've done? Of what you've destroyed?
This was unlikely. As a reward for his servitude, Caesar allowed Jean to pick a punishment for Benny. Annoyed that Benny never proposed a new date for their chill sesh, Jean decided on crucifixion.
You sick, vindictive
This actually prevented Jean from acquiring Benny's suit, so Jean did some tech shit to get it. If you then resurrect Benny again, you'll find that he's become quite attached to his new home.
I got nothing to say to you.
With Benny out of the picture, Jean immediately forgot about him and asked Caesar if anything else was on the agenda. Caesar wanted to even the playing field between the NCR and the Legion by killing Mr. House. Jean did not understand what an NCR was, but was quite happy to get rid of Mr. House, as he turned out to be quite mean for no good reason. Yeet! Jean's next task is to make contact with the reclusive tribe known as the Boomers. They stockpile a boatload of explosives and are not above using it against anyone trying to reach their base. Jean is left to either ally the Boomers to Caesar's Legion or eradicate them. The first option seemed the most plausible, but then he remembered what the Boomers did to the housing market. Yeet! A conqueror of 87 tribes, Caesar understood that things like this happen in the heat of passion. Caesar then briefed Jean on his next task, allying the White Glove Society to Caesar's cause. This is the tribe that runs the most fancy casino on the New Vegas Strip. Not unlike the uber wealthy in real life, they have little regard for human life that isn't their own. This is hinted towards because some of their members are eating motherfuckers. When talking to Caesar, Jean noticed something strange. Caesar, the mighty spear at the end of the Legion's stick, was starting to chip. His health was failing him.
What's it look like, you asshole?
And there was not a doctor in sight. Caesar then crankily goes to bed. Interrupting his nap will have direct consequences.
I warned you not to bother me!
So Jean sets out to the Ultralux to see if he can't sway the White Glove Society towards Caesar's Legion, deciding that pranking the receptionist by telling him he's a cannibal too is the best course of action. Jean was now involved with convincing a still reluctant part of the tribe to embrace the consumption of human flesh. challenge. Mortimer put him in charge of finding the main course. Jean thought Raul could take one for the team.
I'm sorry, but it absolutely must be a human. Former doesn't count.
Jean then traveled to the north of Vegas to find a replacement dinner guest. Mortimer pointed him in this direction as the main course needed to have some of that blue blood in him. He was unsuccessful with knocking him out.
What the? Don't touch me. I could get a better massage from a baby.
But it was quite easy to persuade him to just go there himself. So this dude gets eaten by the White Glove Society, and after dinner, Mortimer reveals that they've in fact all eaten human flesh. Kinda like when your mom tricks you into eating vegan and only saying the bacon was in fact not bacon after the fact. Except one instance is a crime against humanity while the other is cannibalism. Because ethically, eating your fellow man is a big no-no, the White Glove Society found themselves without any allies, except Caesar's Legion. All that's needed to win their allegiance was to trick them into resorting back to cannibalism. Jean did not understand the hype, however. He then reported to Caesar with news of his success and was ready for the next mission. But Caesar started staring off into the nothingness. Jean recognized this look and surmised that Caesar's thoughts had also escaped this conversation and moved towards Latinas. It was no longer possible to ignore. Caesar was severely ill. Despite this, Caesar gave Jean the order to annihilate the Brotherhood of Steel. So Jean pays the Brotherhood of Steel a visit to get their side of the story. Maybe this whole ordeal was a bit more nuanced than it seemed, but they started blasting on sight, so it was self-defense when he did this. With the Brotherhood now destroyed, Caesar invited Jean for a private heart-to-heart. He confided that there was something wrong with his health and asked Jean if he knew what. Jean had no idea, so he opted to use his charisma to get out of this awkward exchange.
I'm not familiar with that condition. Is it treatable?
Sure, why not?
Then go find some proper surgical tools.
And that's how Jean bluffed his way into becoming Caesar's physician. In reality, Caesar is suffering from a brain tumor. This does not bode well for the Legion because 1. An autocracy generally falls apart when its leader dies, and 2. Designing said autocracy to dismiss medical science will result in a shortage of doctors, which sucks when you get diagnosed with cancer. But all hope is not lost, as Caesar is the only one in camp who has an autodoc, a marvel of science that can perform complex medical procedures without the need for human expertise. The problem is that a couple of components are missing, rendering its surgical abilities useless. Jean is then sent to scour the wasteland to find these parts. After retrieving the missing part, the path of this main quest can take one of two very important branches. The player character can only successfully operate on Caesar if they have enough medical know-how or if they get lucky. If not, Caesar dies. If Caesar lives, he'll be fit enough to lead the Legion going forward. And if Caesar dies, people are bummed about it. When this happens, command falls to Legate Lanius, Caesar's second in command. Lanius only cares for carnage, but does not possess the capacity to uphold Caesar's philosophy in the same way as the man himself. An effective warrior, but someone who falls short as a visionary. Or at least, that's what Caesar would have you believe. I thought he was a pretty smart boy. But Jean was not in the habit of questioning anything Caesar told him. Whatever happens, the assault on Hoover Dam must go on. This was not the first time Caesar launched an attack on Hoover Dam, as years earlier, his then legate Joshua Graham led an assault on the dam. The NCR drove them off and almost wiped them out. In response, Joshua was covered in kindling, lit on fire and thrown in the Grand Canyon. According to Caesar, this was merciful. This earned Joshua the moniker of the Burnt Man. He is actually still alive and appears in one of the DLCs. Caesar had made plans to assassinate the president of the NCR. Regardless of his status, the attempt on the president's life continues.
So, do you have a plan for how you're going to kill Kimball?
Disguises and fireworks. With a weakened and demotivated NCR, it's time to attack Hoover Dam. Under the sexily voiced command of Lanius,
the NCR will find our teeth at their throats in a dozen places.
Jean leads Raul, his legionaries and his rocket launcher into the heart of the dam, where General Lee Oliver is getting ready for his final stand, which is quite challenging with only one leg. And that concludes the second battle of Hoover Dam. If Caesar lives, he takes Hoover Dam and subjects a large portion of the Mojave to slavery, eradicating small tribes and villages and absorbing them into his ever-growing legion. No more individuality, no more gambling, and no more hookers. For his service and cunning, Caesar bestows upon Gene Z his new name, Genius Zebra, or as the British call him, Genius Zebra. But there is an alternative universe out there where Gene fails to save Caesar, and since Legate Lennius is not an intellectual philosopher, Gene instead rises to fill the spot on Caesar's empty throne. After we take Hoover Dam, we will march to the south in our quest for thick Latinas. And that is the best fate one can have in post-apocalyptic America. Thank you. And that's gonna do it for Caesar's Legion. If you enjoyed this for some reason, why not check out some more stuff? We've already covered Fallout 3, the NCR ending, as well as the Mr. House ending. And there's more stuff on the horizon.